Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. Here to bring you the latest information that we have on what's going on with the weather. Of course, the first thing we'll discuss is updating info on the tropics. Continues to be very active out there, so what we're going to do is go over all the latest model guidance that we have from overnight into this morning, discuss it, dissect it, and break it all down for you folks. Kind of tell you what it means, what it doesn't mean. And all that good stuff, and feed you guys a bunch of information here. And we're going to continue to do this. There's a lot of people that are hypersensitive to the tropics right now, and rightfully so. There's a lot of people that think there's another storm coming. It's not even a question, it's a statement. They just flat out think there's another storm coming. So we're going to continue to break this down for you folks. We might start pumping out 2 videos a day. I might have another video this evening, might not. I'll definitely let you guys know ahead of time if I do. But it might, we might come to a point where we start pumping it out twice a day just to get you guys the latest information, especially if some sort of real threat materializes. So we'll break it all down for you folks. After we get done doing that, we will talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Tuesday. Never want to leave you folks hanging there that rely on me for your daily forecast. We'll have that, even though, back home across the lower 48, it's not going to be a very active weather day whatsoever, but we will break it down for you folks. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it, and so others can do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. Let's make sure this is going to work for us. As you can tell, we got our satellite back up so we can start, circling some of these storms. So, check out what's actually happening out here in the Atlantic. So we have what is Kirk right here. Kind of an eyesore on your screen. It has that beginning look to what's going to be a powerful hurricane, just a tropical storm right at this second, but it's a very large storm. And Kirk is well on its way to becoming not only a hurricane, but a major hurricane. But the good news with Kirk is it's eventually just going to turn out to sea and eventually end up where the leftovers of Joyce is right now, which is this blob of energy you see here. So you're seeing these, reds, oranges, blacks, whites. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have that intense deep convection updraft soaring up pretty high in the atmosphere. Higher up you get, the colder it gets, and this is indicated by these colors right here. Now, we do have something right behind Kirk, and this is likely going to be Leslie, the L name. And that is this blob of convection right behind Kirk. So this has a shot to become a powerful hurricane also. Now, I have my doubts on this happening because a lot of times when tropical systems trail a powerful tropical system, which is likely what Kirk is going to be, sometimes the one out ahead of, for example, this one, can whiplash the one behind it and create some sort of outflow, basically throw shear back to the system behind it. So we'll watch for that. I am interested to see if model guidance will downtrend on what will likely be Leslie, but as of now, it is not. But this blob of energy right here is an area of interest, and it's actually an invest and will most likely take another name out of the hurricane list of names. And then we got this area right into here. Now, nothing is put together. There's no invest. We are just watching this area right here. Okay, this has been around for a while, for a few days, and this is what's kind of spooked everybody across the southeast about another storm on the way. This has. From back over the weekend, there was a lot of crazy model runs showing a hurricane, sometime later this week. That is not the case anymore, but I'm going to tell you, model guidance is looking a little bit different on this, and I'm going to explain that. There'll be a timestamp for the Caribbean and the Gulf that I'll have up if you just want to jump right ahead to that. But it is worth discussing all this energy out here too. So this is what's going on right now. Isaac is gone, has since trailed way up across the North Atlantic. I no longer have Isaac. So yeah, this is what's going on across the Atlantic right now. Let's continue to move forward. As far as the update from the National Hurricane Center, this is the 5 a.m. update. We'll have an 8 a.m. update here in the next hour or so. Some of this info might change, but info as far as the National Hurricane Center. None of the model guidance or anything like that, of course. As we get deeper in the day, we have new model runs, but as of this morning, all this information is pretty valid here. Joyce, the remnants of Joyce, I would say, for it to be the remnants of Joyce, is still popping off some pretty deep convection, but Joyce is pretty much on the way out. Kirk, which is a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm. My face might be in the way a little bit, but a 998 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm will likely become a hurricane sometime over the next 24 hours, maybe a major hurricane. And then we have what is called Invest 91L, and it has a 90% chance to develop sometime in the next 7 days. So we are likely going to take the next name out of this, which is that area I circled on the satellite there, and it has a 60% chance just to develop in the next 2 days. So develop means develop into a tropical depression or a named storm, which will be Leslie. And we still got this, and I'm just going to click this. 40% chance for something to develop in this orange area. That has actually dropped from a 50% chance yesterday around this time. This could, go back and forth like a seesaw. Could go from 40 to 50, back to 40, back to 50. I could see that for the time being. I could also see this getting kind of shoved a little bit further west in the Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche, but there's a 40% chance of a depression or a named storm developing somewhere in this orange area. And this is kind of the area that has sparked a lot of questions about another storm coming. So I do want to kind of talk briefly on what will be Major Hurricane Kirk at some point. It is forecast to become a hurricane sometime tonight, 2 a.m., and then will become a Category 2 hurricane by the time we get into Thursday morning. And guys, the peak intensity of this is a 125 mile per hour high-end Category 3 major hurricane. So there's a good shot we're going to have a big-time hurricane way out here in the Atlantic. But you notice it is quite literally going to make a turn north and eventually go out to sea, right smack in the middle of the North Atlantic. You got Bermuda way over here, the East Coast way over here, not going to bother a soul. But we are watching the one behind it, which I do think is going to be a fish storm also. A fish storm meaning a storm that's going to turn out to sea and not bother much of anybody. Okay? But I think that what will likely be Leslie will probably turn a little bit later. That's why it's worth watching. So let's go over all model guides that we have. We'll go over the GFS, Euro, etc. So this is Kirk. This is soon to be Leslie behind it. All right, watch how Kirk strengthens, that millibar deepens, which means we have a strengthening tropical cyclone here. This turns out to sea very slowly, but it does. And then we got Leslie right behind it developing. Not Leslie right now, but will most likely be Leslie by the end of this week, if not over the next 2 days. Okay, there's Kirk turning out to sea, not bothering anybody. Powerful hurricane. People are going to try to spook you with this system, with both of them. Do not let them. Trust me. If you don't trust me, that's fine. But find a reliable source that you can trust. But whether it's TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, X, whatever, people are going to try to spook you with these systems. But as of right now, Kirk, I would say no doubt is turning out to sea. Leslie, we need to watch a little bit more, soon to be Leslie. And as we're getting into this coming Sunday morning, October the 6th, okay, we got Kirk, powerful hurricane, heading out to sea, turning north and eventually back northeast. And then we got Leslie, which shows to be a pretty strong hurricane also, cruising in a little bit more of a low latitude, hanging south a little bit longer. But about a week from today, this eventually turns north too, just a little bit further east. I would say we need to watch this just to, be safe here. Okay. Now, what about the Euro model? Same thing. Kirk heads north, strengthens. That's Kirk right there. This is soon to be Leslie. Kirk is turning north. Takes its sweet time doing so, but eventually does. I would say it hangs a little bit further west than the GFS model does. But man, turns into just a Category 4 hurricane out here. In fact, the peak intensity might go at the Category 4 status. And then here comes Leslie. You see it down here on your screen, deepening to a 969 millibar hurricane this coming Sunday evening. Cruises a little bit further south, but even this eventually turns out to sea pretty dramatically by the time we get into late next week. So it's pretty far out. Now, the Euro AI model, let's see if we have another one of this. We don't, but this is the one from 18Z. Takes Kirk, turns it out to sea. Then it gets Leslie down here. Keeps it a little bit weaker for longer. So we got tropical storm. Then we got Hurricane Leslie Monday morning. So about 6 days from now. But look how much further south it keeps it. And Euro AI model has done pretty well. So we're about a 1 week from today, and you would think, oh no, we got a major hurricane heading towards the Leeward Islands. But it does begin to tick north, but man, it gets awfully close about 10 days from now. And if we take this past 10 days, which is a very unreliable time frame, it does eventually turn this out to sea. Bermuda is this speck right here, gets very close, but it does eventually turn this out to sea also. So now if we look at the EPS, the European Ensemble, which makes up 51 runs here, throws it all on a screen for us. Okay, that is Kirk. Clear signal of it's turning out to sea, right? Very clear signal, very strong, powerful hurricane. This is soon to be Leslie behind it, and this goes out to Saturday evening. So there's a very strong signal for Leslie forming too. Okay, now let's take this 1 week out, and these are going to kind of cluster together. But you know, there goes Kirk, kind of exiting your screen, if you will. Here's Leslie. All right, Leslie, the guidance is a little bit more spread out here. You got some members that are just flat out turning out to sea, some hanging a little bit further south. But for the most part, it looks like this thing is gaining latitude, which means it looks like it's creeping north. Now, if we extend this to 8 to 9 days out, you do have, in fact, let's just go on and go 10 days out. You do have members getting very, very close to the Leeward Islands. I mean, you got, I would say, a pretty decent percentage of them getting pretty close, but none of them go into the islands here. So that's why I say Kirk, we just kind of watch it just to kind of if you're interested in the tropics, just kind of, just look at how impressive of a hurricane it is out there in the tropics, in the Atlantic. Leslie, you watch more so to see model trends. How far south does it stay? That's a big question. So we'll continue to watch. I would say more so soon to be Leslie. Now, let's switch it to the Caribbean. There's been some interesting changes overnight, and I would say the changes have not been that good, but I would also say that this is kind of new changes that could eventually go away very quickly, I would say. So let's start all this off by Thursday morning, October the 3rd. So here in the next 48 hours, right? I will say right now, the CAG, Central American Gyre, is popping off right now. Okay. I'm going to circle some things. It's basically this broad area of low pressure that hangs out over Central America. Broad cyclonic flow, and occasionally you'll get areas of energy on the Atlantic side, then you'll get areas of energy on the Pacific side. And these areas of energy can eventually consolidate, form into a tropical system, which is what brought us Helene, Central American Gyre. So this happens every hurricane season. It's already happened this hurricane season. It's happened multiple times. Okay, you can't just count the Atlantic, you count the Pacific too. Broad area spin down here, and we're going to watch to see if it does it again. Okay, and then we end up getting what would be the M name, which is Milton. Okay, so is this going to happen? We're not quite sure, but let's go on and keep this in motion. Not a whole lot going on as we're getting into Friday evening. Okay, we get into Saturday. Not a whole lot going on, just blobs of green in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, I think at this point we have two areas of energy, if the GFS is correct. We have this area of energy in the northern Gulf of Mexico, okay, and then we have a new area of energy kind of getting going in what we call the Bay of Campeche, the BOC for short. Now watch what happens. This little initial inner piece of energy tries to get going up here in the northeast Gulf of Mexico. Doesn't really get its act together, kind of fizzles apart, and then a more dominant piece of energy develops down here in the Bay of Campeche, then surges northeast, develops into a hurricane, and eight and a half days from now, 7.5 days from now, you have a landfalling hurricane into the west coast of Florida. That's new. That's a new model run for sure. And then it just kind of dances around and gets lost. But this is about 7 to 8 days from now. But I can tell you, model guidance is starting to like this idea. So it isn't that first little piece of energy, okay, which is kind of right in here. And you can really see this energy pretty well if you look at the 500 millibar Vort chart. Okay, you got this area of energy right here. You got this area of energy down here. You can see how they're two dominant pieces of energy pretty well right here as we're getting into the end of this weekend. One right there, one right here. Okay. You keep this going, the other one fizzles apart, and then you got what would be a very tiny hurricane developing and then going into the bend of Florida once again, or the west coast of Florida. All right, that's not a forecast. What about the euro? Remember, the euro always is going to stay more conservative strength-wise, but it kind of does something similar. Gets energy into the Gulf of Mexico this weekend, tries to consolidate something right here. Doesn't look like it ever happens. It does look like the number is dropping on this millibar right here. Okay, it eventually does something odd about a week from today. Almost looks like it combines the energy. And, you know, eventually it does try to take something into the southern tip of Florida. But the euro is much more conservative with anything getting going here. It would say, I would say, you know, if we go about a week from today, it does have a 1002 millibar low developing. And if we look at the 500 chart here, you can barely see the energy here. Now, if you look at the lower levels, maybe a little bit more. Yeah, so there's your really broad kind of rotation right here in the Gulf of Mexico. Something is trying to get going here. There it is, very, very broad. But it doesn't look like it ever fully does. And it does eventually, 10 days from now, take it into South Florida. Now, the Icon model is pretty aggressive with this, just like the GFS is. Icon takes this, we get into Friday. It's already wanting to get the energy going in the Bay of Campeche. We get into the end of this week. Well, we get into Saturday evening. There it is. In fact, I'm just going to go on and flip this to the southeast frame here. Here it is creeping up on your screen. We have a developing hurricane next Friday afternoon in the southern Gulf of Mexico. This thing is cruising east. And all of a sudden we have what is a 969 millibar Category 2 hurricane ticking east about a week from today, next Tuesday morning. So that's, you know, you compare that with what the GFS shows it literally right in the same spot. Similar strength, some sort of decent and shrink tropical cyclone. The Canadian model, and I haven't been showing the Canadian model much, but here it is, same thing. Get some energy in the Bay of Campeche going this weekend, which is this area right here. Doesn't do much with the initial energy that gets kind of tossed out of the Western Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. It wants to develop that energy in the Bay of Campeche from the CAG. Okay? And eventually, let's get a little bit closer here. Eventually, we have a developing tropical cyclone down here about 7 to 8 days from now. And eventually this does make landfall in the 7 to 10 day range as just a tropical storm. Nothing too crazy or anything. So I will say, you know, the Euro AI model, because I don't just want to show you the aggressive model runs, which I did show you the Euro, which was not that aggressive. The 18Z Euro AI model wasn't much, just an area of unsettled weather, so that's good. Let's hope that the Euro AI model can be right here. It did very well with Helene, but we are certainly watching this. This has been some interesting changes overnight. It does not latch onto that first kind of area of interest. It latches onto another piece of, like a vort piece of energy in the Bay of Campeche, and then eventually gets that going. I know I haven't really discussed on environmental factors that do support a tropical system, but listen, the upper wind pattern would support it, and the sea surface temperatures are still warm in the Gulf of Mexico. They will remain warm for at least another month and a half, okay, before they really substantially start to cool off enough to not really support tropical development that much. So maybe even longer, maybe all the way into early December. So as far as 120 hours out on the European ensemble, I mean, there is a signal for this first little area that gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and then there's a signal for something getting going down here. Whether they're the same piece of energy, I would say no. But if we go about a week out, okay, it's everywhere. It gets really jumbled up. You got some of those members that do eventually take it into Florida. None of these members are overly strong. I think the strongest one I see is like a 976 millibar hurricane that kind of does some kind of weird loop-de-loop in the Bay of Campeche, but not overly strong members. Now, if we do look at the GEFS ensemble, which, yeah, it's only It's only going to go out 108 hours out. So we're going to have to look at the, let's see, going to have to look at the older model run here and go about a week out from the overnight GEFS ensemble. And I mean, it's everywhere, guys. Just a big jumbled up mess, not a solid signal for anything. So we're still watching this. Interesting model changes on the global models, I would say, on the operational runs is what I should say. So we're going to continue to watch that. That's some interesting development, and hopefully it just goes away, because we don't want to see another hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. But we're going to continue to watch it. So speaking on what's happening back home across the lower 48, we still got pesky rain falling across the mid-Atlantic. There is an area of rainfall that is making its way across the eastern UP, eventually getting into the northern sections of lower Michigan. We got a storm system trying to fly down into western Canada. A little bit of shower activity across the southeast. Outside of that, nothing too crazy going on right now. Watches, warnings, and advisories, red flag warnings in this kind of hot pink color right here. We got freeze warnings mixed in. So it's cold and it's dry across the high plains. Definitely feels like the morning of October 1st, which, by the way, happy October to you all. It just doesn't really feel like fall across southeast, though. It's just hot and humid. It's been warm and humid, I would say. But the southwest, has a pretty impressive temperature gradient, where the southwest is pretty hot. I mean, like, California is very has a lot of heat alerts. We got heat advisories, excessive heat warnings, red flag warnings. So it's definitely hot and dry across the southwest, especially California. We got a lot of flood warnings, around these rivers and lakes and stuff like that across the southeast from what Helene did. We got some dense fog out there also. As far as the excessive rainfall outlook, good news, just a couple marginal risks, so we're not expecting any threat of flash flooding. We definitely don't need that anymore from what we've been dealing with across the southern apps. And then the risk of severe weather. Have had some weird days, and my buddy Gerald has called it really well. We've had some tornado threats over the last couple of days, and just marginal risk. But today, you can't rule it out, but just 4 areas of general risk of thunderstorms, not a big deal at all. So we will watch out for some thunderstorms in the areas that, if you live in the green area, a risk of thunderstorms is possible. The southeast today was started this morning. We're dealing with some rain up here in the mid-Atlantic, the Tidewater. We start to move into this afternoon. We're going to get, once again, just kind of isolated to widespread downpours across the southern apps, Kentucky, Tennessee, West Virginia, North Carolina. Even areas of South Carolina can get this too. And just kind of widespread pop-up activity, just like what we dealt with yesterday. Maybe not quite as widespread, but these will pop up, then they'll kind of weaken with the loss of daytime heating. And by the time we get into the overnight hours, we're left with some lingering shower activity. But, I would say if you live in this area up here, you certainly, run the risk of some pop-up shower and storm activity. But a lot of this stuff will just be downpour activity, no real storm threat with it at all. So the Northeast dealing with some rain down here in the mid-Atlantic. And once you get into Ohio, kind of the same thing to your south. We'll get some pop-up activity, shower and storm activity up here. A very pop-up in nature. It'll kind of pop up over your area or move over your area. Then it'll move on out. Then you might get another downpour in about 30 minutes. Now, we could get some just widespread storms across the southern Ontario area, so be aware of that this afternoon. We're just going to get some shower activity across PA. And by the time this works its way into the western New York State area, it could be falling apart, but we are definitely going to wake up to some shower activity across the mid-Atlantic, Pennsylvania, New York State, especially the central and western half of New York State tomorrow morning. Saw a picture out of Vermont, and the looks like peak fall foliage is well underway. It's kind of been something that hasn't been talked about as much because of how active the tropics have been. It's kind of been put on the back burner, but hearing that your colors are doing well up there in the state of Vermont, I believe is what I meant to say. I think I said that. Something's telling me I said Wisconsin, but I don't know. But we're getting into this afternoon. It's quiet across the south central U.S. This evening, overnight hours, tomorrow morning, it's pretty nice weather. It's been pretty calm across the south central U.S. lately. The north central U.S. will, get rid of the shower activity. We're going to deal with it in lower Michigan, though, for example, in eastern lower Michigan, there, getting close to Lake Huron into southern Ontario. We're probably going to get some storms, some showers into Detroit, Cleveland, the rest of the upper Midwest, Great Lakes region, the plains, quiet. Nice weather, cooler weather, kind of feels like fall again, for now at least. So, Western U.S., not a whole lot going on out here either. It's pretty quiet. We're getting into this evening. Some showers are possible across Seattle. But folks, outside of that, it's pretty quiet. Temperatures, it's still warm across the deep south. Not unbearably hot, just still kind of soupy, kind of humid out there to kickstart your October. 60s for the most part up in the Northeast, depending on where you are, cooler or warmer. And it'll feel like fall today for your first day of October across the plains, 60s, just some 50s up here in the northern portion of Wisconsin, the UP, northern Minnesota. So temperatures out west, there is a gradient here where it's pretty hot across the southwest. Once you get across the central and northern Rockies, though, into the high plains, it gets comfortable again. Very, very nice, pleasant weather for your October 1st. For my friends in the eastern U.S., and I'm thinking about talking about this tonight, wondering about a cold front. I will say confidence is really increasing. About 5 to 6 days from now, we're going to finally get our first sweeping cold front of the season that will make it all the way to the southeast. So stay tuned. I will speak on that. I'll break it down for you folks. I kind of made a post about it on social media yesterday on Facebook and Twitter and X. So I think I'm going to talk about that here in the coming videos. Just don't have a lot of time to talk about now to really dive into it like I would like. But there's definitely a cold front, a solid signal for a cold front coming as early as the tail end of this coming weekend. So that's something to be excited about. I know that this warm, muggy weather is kind of almost in a way put me out in the fall spirit. So hopefully that's something we can look forward to. It'll be nice for the cleanup from what Hurricane Helene did. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon.